Chibi Assassin's Creed by Titania. First installment. Chapter 3. Altaïr ibn Lahad. He picked up the apple. It was as if it came alive in his hand, as though a huge bolt of energy flowed from it that lit the apple and traveled up his arm, right into his chest. He felt a great swelling that was uncomfortable at first, then felt life-giving, washing away the pain of battle, filling him with power. The apple throbbed and seemed to pulse, and Altaïr began to see images. Then the apple was enveloped by a corona of light that spread outwards until Altaïr saw that he was looking at a globe, a huge globe that hung in the still air of the garden. It was slowly spinning and radiating a warm golden light. He readied himself to smash the apple against the stone. Still unable to take his eyes from the spinning image, finding it hard to make his arm heed the command of his brain. "Destroy it!" called Al-Mualim. "Destroy it as you said you would." I can't," Altaïr said, trembling, as his muscles refused to obey the command of his brain. "Yes, you can, Altaïr. You can, but you won't," gasped Al-Mualim, and with that he died. Altaïr looked up from the body of his dead mentor to find Malik and his men gazing expectantly at him, waiting for leadership and guidance. Altaïr was the master now. Once again the apple lit up, this time engulfing Altaïr in a warm golden glow. The glowing became brighter, and soon Altaïr was trapped in a world that only seemed to consist of the light from the apple. It was a comfortable light, but the apple turning into a golden mist wasn't at all appealing to him, and neither were the changes to his body. He felt a pressing from all sides, as if the apple was shrinking his body. He felt something form on his head, and they lay flat over his eyes. The uncomfortable feeling eased up, and Altaïr felt himself curled together, the ears providing a comfortable darkness from the ever-glowing light. He was still exhausted from his fight with Al-Mualim, but the apple had washed away most of his fatigue. He woke up when he felt someone curl up against his back. He lifted away one of the ears, and just in time drew his sword to fend off something falling down on him. He may have been a changed man, but he still had his anger issues, so it would have come as no surprise to anyone who knew Altaïr that he would begin to shout and swear. But this man, who looked tired, just picked up Altaïr and someone else so he could sleep. Altaïr kept on shouting at the man. How dare he pick him up like he was nothing but a mere child? The man, seeming to understand him, just flat out ignored him and fell asleep. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he had grown tired of shouting at a sleeping man. Instead, he had sat down, only then feeling the tail, and had begun to poke the man with his sword. He noticed the other, using the man's head so he did not fall, and looked up at him. He stopped poking the man, and the other pointed at himself. The other had looked at him as if he was trying to understand what Altaïr was saying. So Altaïr had come to the conclusion that neither of them really spoke the same language. "Ezio," said the other. He had a pair of cat-like ears on his head, seeming to be either a part of his hood or just under it. "Altaïr," he said, and then looking at the man and then back to Ezio, who shrugged. He didn't seem to know the man's name either. Just then, a door to the room opened, and Altaïr heard a man call out a name, as if to ask if the man was awake. "Desmond? Are you awake in here? I'm going out for something to eat. Anything special you want?" Altaïr understood what was being said, but it didn't seem like Ezio did. The man at the door took one look at them and then slowly walked backwards and out of the room, closing the door after him before shouting another name. "Rebecca, please tell me I'm not seeing this. The bleeding effect can't work on us, right?" Ezio still didn't seem to understand what was being said. Then a woman stuck her head into the room and looked at him, and then Altaïr. She then also closed the door silently behind her. Altaïr looked at the door from where the two strangers had appeared, and when the woman had closed the door, he had turned his eyes back to Ezio. Altaïr then began poking the young man with his mini sword again, trying to wake him up. In the end, he had had enough and slashed at the man's cheek, finally drawing blood. The man, Desmond, woke up and put a hand to his face. He then turned around and was laying on his back, and then sat up and turned to the two of them. Altaïr tried to stand up. He succeeded, but had a hard time trying to keep his balance. Out of the corner of his eyes, Altaïr could see Ezio sitting down and playing with his tail. Desmond had noticed as well, and had turned his attention towards Altaïr. "I'm not going to hurt you," Desmond said, trying to sound reassuring. "And really, I do not know what happened to you. To either of you," the man continued. "The apple lit up, and then I was engulfed in the light from it. And then you almost fell down on us," Altaïr said, sounding less angry than he wanted to. "I'm sorry about that. I was really tired." Desmond gave Altaïr a weak smile. "Someone came in just a moment ago, a man and a woman. The man seemed to want something from you." Altaïr hadn't felt so at peace talking with someone as he felt when talking to Desmond. The man nodded and turned towards Ezio, talking in a tongue Altaïr didn't understand, but a moment after he turned back to Altaïr and told him to stay in here until he was back. Altaïr had never been one for waiting when he, in all honesty, didn't have to. So it didn't take him long to, somehow, convince Ezio to help him get out of the room. Ezio looked up at the door, seeming to have already given up on opening it. As Ezio didn't seem to move, Altaïr walked away and sprinted towards him. He then jumped as high as he could, perfectly using Ezio's head as a platform so he could reach to the handle on the door. The door clicked, and Ezio pushed it open. Altaïr let go of the handle and landed beside Ezio, and as they walked through the door, the man who had come in and asked for Desmond pointed at them. "What about, those two?" the man asked, and just as Desmond turned around, Altaïr sprinted towards him, calculating his jump, the size of his body, and the extra lift he had felt just a moment ago from jumping. He landed perfectly in Desmond's hood. He had just enough time to witness Ezio being catched by Desmond, and then he was on his way up the man's head. "Okay, then," the woman said. She was probably Rebecca. Altaïr remembered her from a few moments ago. The other man had called after Rebecca, and she had been the one to close the door after looking at them. They all ate, Desmond sharing his food with Ezio and Altaïr. The rest of the day went with Desmond, and a little bit Altaïr, teaching Ezio some English. Altaïr understood it, but had never really bothered to completely learn to speak it. He never learned it so much that he could get rid of his Arabic accent, and he preferred his Arabic anyways. When Desmond went to bed that night, Ezio was curled against his neck. Altaïr crawled under Desmond's arm and fell asleep in Desmond's embrace, feeling safe and at home in the arms of the other man. Altaïr awoke in the middle of the night by a feeling that passed through his whole body. Slowly he moved away from Desmond and found, to his apparent amusement, that he was once again back to his right size. Suddenly, Ezio fell out of the bed, and he too seemed to be back to his original self. They both stared down at Desmond, both wanting to wake him, and yet wanting him to rest.